All right. I believe we are recording. Yes, we are. Okay, great. So welcome to day 2 of the, what is this called? The celebration of difference. Being a wonderful weirdo, being the wonderful weirdo that you truly be. Thanks everybody for yesterday's conversation and your questions from it. And yeah, keep the questions coming. I mean, and like we said yesterday, this is a huge topic. There is an entire 2-day X-Men class that is where we really dive into a lot of this stuff. There's a 1-day X-Men class, and even that, like every single X-Men class that I've done has been completely different because there's just really truly unlimited conversations that we can have about this topic, because it applies. Like I'm doing I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday, but I'm doing a telecall in January on X-Men and business. So there's a whole world that we could talk about just with X-Men and business, or X-Men with bodies, or X-Men, parenting, or X-Men kids, or relationships, or sex, or money, or like, there's so many different places we can go with this conversation. So let this be, either an intro for you or a continuation. And the beauty is that these classes are every conversation about X-Men is completely different, because that's how X-Men function. Making yourself wrong, trying to embrace. I'm just reading Parisa's question. I've been playing with not making myself wrong, so I try to embrace where I'm right, which I get in the same polarity. Cool. Well, that actually is quite in line with what I wanted to talk about today. Some people had asked about this thing about flipping things. I addressed yesterday a little bit of when you have a sense of wrongness, or when you're judging you, flip it on its head, turn it 180 degrees, which we could look at that. We could talk about that in lots of different ways. It can be, you could look at, like, because somebody else asked about how do I actually see my capacities from what I perceive as my weaknesses. How do I turn what I think is wrong about me into what is strong about me? And it's really a muscle that you develop over time. When you recognize that every time you judge yourself, it is a choice. It is a choice. And you can look at this from 180 different degrees. Yeah. Or actually, if you go spherical, it's like, it's unlimited, basically, how you can change your perspective. And part of what this boils down to is that your point of view creates your reality. So you are like fixing your reality, unless you use the tools of access consciousness or being a different question, being the space of question, which is actually something that X-Men are quite good at doing if they're functioning as themselves. A quote from Gary Douglas is that autism, people with autism function from the question that nobody else is willing to be. This curiosity of, like, no sense of linearity about the world, no sense of past, present, or future. I mean, if you work with people that have an autism diagnosis, like, that's one of the things that in this reality they would be working with, is like getting them to see, how what happens now creates the future. But when you have an autistic brain, you don't have a sense of past, present, or future. So everything is occurring simultaneously. And that can be very kind of overwhelming if you're looking through the lens of this reality, but it can also be a huge gift. So that was just a little bit of a side note, I guess. I'm being very X-Men about this whole conversation. So pardon me while I go all over the map. Don't pardon me. Join me. Because that's what X-Men are good at. So with this thing about flipping something on its head, when you go into the judgment of you, and this is one of those things where if you just are finding these conversations, or you haven't been exposed to the tools of access consciousness, or looking at like what else is possible beyond your judgment of yourself, basically. It can be, this might seem very lofty, okay, but there is a reality where you actually can be so present with yourself that you're actually really aware when you are doing judgment of yourself, you know? And I mean, for a lot of humanoids and X-Men, they live that, like, that's their world. Like, that's how they tend to function, is judgment of me, not of anybody else, you know? And human reality is very much about judging other people. So humanoids and X-Men judge themselves. Dynamically, kind of all day long, you know, until you start to explore a different possibility. So as you're doing that, you probably have some awareness of it. I mean, A, it just doesn't feel good, you know. B, you're not being you in those moments. And that's, you know, one of the things, when you're not being you, it's going to have a heaviness to it. Like, your world will have a sense of heaviness to it. So that's an indicator that, you know, you could change something. And one of the things is start to acknowledge that you're choosing it, you know, and it may not feel like a choice. It may not seem like a choice, because you may really not have a sense that, it may feel like there's no way I could not do this. There's no way that I could not judge myself, you know? But this is where you start to play, and you build the muscle of flipping something on its head, of seeing something from a different point of view, even when it comes to you. And so going, okay, cool. I'm judging me right now. I'm choosing this right now. Okay, now what can I do? So there's a whole bunch of tools you can use. I could never possibly give you all of them in this conversation, but one of them is going, okay, well, the 10 keys to freedom are huge. So this is just an interesting point of view that I'm having about myself. Now, that's a massive tool that will give you freedom. It will give you a level of freedom that most people truly are not willing to have in this world. But just going, okay, well, that is an interesting point of view. Like, it's just a point of view. I could have a different point of view. I could have the point of view that I'm not so bad. I could have the point of view that I'm kind of cool. I could have the point of view that I'm brilliant. And one of the ways that you get to a different perspective is by asking a question, because a question will always open up different energies, different awareness, different information. So a great question to ask in that situation is, what's right about me that I'm not getting? One of the key kind of X-Men tools and conversations you want to have in your back pocket, and you all may be familiar with that. How much do you use it? Right? What if this became, you could even say, you know, for the next day until we go to video 3, if you want to make this a little challenge for yourself, these 6 days, you could go, okay, my tool that I'm going to use today is, what's right about me I'm not getting? And if this wasn't wrong, if I wasn't wrong, what would be strong about me and about this? So what would the strongness be? Now, if you immediately go, nothing, you're not actually asking a question. You have to actually ask a question. And how you do that is by, like, getting the value of the freedom that this stuff can give you, the questions, a different perspective on yourself, getting out of the wrongness, flipping it, being able to turn something on its head when it's a judgment of you, especially. But then you can do that with everything in life, basically. But when you get that actually is, or you choose, really, it's a choice for the freedom of space and allowance and all of that to actually be more valuable than the wrongness of you and the judgment of you. Judging you is going to get you nowhere. Truly. And you probably have already discovered that. Like, the more you judge you, the more you have to diminish your life, diminish what you're creating. It shrinks everything. Your money flows, your relationships, the joy in your life, the ease in your life, the ease with your body. It shrinks everything when you judge you. So sometimes it just sort of helps to go, okay, I'm judging me right now, and I can either keep doing this or I can choose something different. And a lot of times people think they're going to magically use the tools of access consciousness enough or change enough or whatever to where they get to a point where magically judgment is gone. But that's not how it works. You have to choose it in the moment. It's kind of like going, well, if I think about going to the gym a lot and I watch videos of people at the gym and I like join a gym and I like, drive by the gym every day, then at some point I'll just be fit, That's not how it works. You have to go to the gym. You have to do something different, right? So in the moment when you're judging you have to go, okay, right now, is this what I want to be choosing? Is this what I want to be saying to myself? Is this the message I want to be sending myself? Or do I desire to actually do something different right now? And push your barriers down, lower your barriers, like commit to something different in that 10 seconds where you're like, okay, just right now, for this 10 seconds, I'm going to choose something different. I'm going to lower my barriers to me and I'm going to wonder. I'm going to wonder what's right about me that I'm not getting. Now, I'm going to ask that question. I'm going to stay in the discomfort of being undefined so that I can be with the question of what's right about me. Because here's the thing, and Parisa is asking, what would it take to look at what's right about me without going into the polarity of right and wrong? If you go from I'm wrong to I'm so right and righteous, it's the same thing. It's the same it's two sides of the same coin. When you go to wonder, you open up a space. And the thing about asking questions is that you will not get an answer right away most of the time. The more you use the tools and the more you play with this stuff, the more you'll have awareness. And this is part of really being that wonderful weirdo, is you've got this awareness like pinging and popping all the time, right? So it's sort of like the gym gets easier when you've been going to the gym, right? The first time you go, you're like, oh my God, this is so hard, So, but a space of curiosity and wonder of like, maybe I'm not fucked up. Maybe I'm not wrong. Maybe this thing that I keep doing with money that just seems so wrong and so fucked and so not productive, maybe there's a capacity here. Maybe this thing that I can't seem to change with my body, maybe there's a capacity here. Now, you're not going to know what it is right away. And it's also not something that you're ever going to know in a defined way, because accessing your capacities is undefined. There's a space between right and wrong. Exactly. That's very well said. Thank you, Parisa. There's a space between right and wrong. And it's not just between right and wrong. It's the space of you. And it's actually a different universe. The space of you. Spherical, all-encompassing, infinite being, all possibility. And right and wrong are like over here. And it's like there's right and there's wrong. And that's it. That's this reality. And that reality doesn't make sense to X-Men. And if this is contributing lightness to your world, it's because it's true for you. So here's the thing, is to be in that wonder, to be in that curiosity, to be exploring, if this wasn't about me being messed up, what would it be? You've got to sit in the question. You've got to be in the undefining of yourself. Right and wrong give you definition. X-Men are the most undefined creatures on the planet if you're willing to be that. Right and wrong give you definition. You fit somewhere into the rightness or wrongness of this reality, the paradigm of right and wrong in this reality. You fit there. But you don't fit So you've got to be willing to hang out in the thrilling discomfort of the unknown, of, okay, so what I'm exploring here is beyond anything I've ever seen before, because you won't find a match for you in the world. Like, we look to other people and things and institutions and whatever to give ourselves a way to define ourselves, but you're not definable. So you have to go to this other universe that's true for you. And yes, interesting point of view is in that space as well. All the tools of access are, and it's not about access, but this is one body of work that gives you a lot of pragmatic tools to access your consciousness, right? So you don't have to do access to have the consciousness, but it's an amazing set of pragmatic tools that I've never seen put together in this way, you know. You can pick them up and use them and change stuff, you know, rather than just have kind of a lofty conversation of possibility where you can ponder things. But this is about tools. You pick up, you use, you change stuff, you create stuff, you expand, you become undefined, right? So beginning to explore that space of, and this is where it's like, what's the tool here? I mean, there's a million tools here, but it's recognizing that well, I'm not even going to we'll go there tomorrow. I'm like, oh, that could be a can of worms. But recognizing that you're an infinite being and asking that question, would an infinite being truly choose this? Would an infinite being need to choose right and wrong? No, an infinite being is not of this world. An infinite being is of consciousness and the universe and everything, right? Not of this world. Okay, so I'm going to hang out. I'm going to hang out at the gym. I'm going to be like, I have no idea what that machine is, but I'm going to play with it. Maybe someone can help me. Maybe I can, you know, like talk to the machine and be like, hey, what do you do? Show me how to use you, you know? That's how X-Men tend to function, you know, just being the wonderful weirdo. Or I can see maybe someone else will do it and then I can see how they're doing it and I can try it out, you know? So it's like getting information, you know, by just hanging out in that space. Because when you ask a question, what's right about me I'm not getting? If this wasn't wrong, what would the strongness be? What are my capacities here? All these questions that open up. It's like you've just opened up the space. Now hang in the space that you just opened. Refrain from going to definition or judgment. And if you do, you can still choose every 10 seconds, you can choose something different. But hang out in the space of like, wow, I have no idea what my capacity would be. But if I just stay with the curiosity of that, I'm not going to be as much in the judgment. You can't have question and judgment in the same space. They cancel each other out. So you got to choose, right? And as you do, all of these things will start to show up in your life just over time because you've asked that question. It's not necessarily going to be immediate, but over time, there's so many things that will show up because you've asked the question. And this is the beauty of question. And as an X-Men humanoid, we be the question. We just aren't always willing to ask it. And to acknowledge that we're being it. And oftentimes we care more about defining ourselves in this reality than we do about having a different possibility. And that's, you know, again, like this is a massive conversation that can be very, very far reaching in your life and in the world. But this is the beginning, you know, there's so much more and you just have to keep playing with it and keep exploring it. So, hopefully that was helpful. See if you can play, you know, over the next day between now and tomorrow's thingy about, you know, just play with the exploration of, all right, if I don't have to define me as right or wrong, and I could be in that space, that massive space that is actually me, and I could be just wondering what's right about me, what would that be like? You know, and even if you have a minute there or an hour there, or, you know, a couple 30-second increments over the next 24 hours, or maybe you have lots of hours, like whatever that is for you, acknowledge it, appreciate it, enjoy it, recognize it as something different. Because as you do, you expand that space. You add your awareness and your energy to the space that you're choosing and being. And when you acknowledge it, it becomes greater just by the magic of your awareness. It all really comes down to all of life comes to us with ease and joy and glory, the access mantra. And how do you get there? Well, there's a lot of tools, a lot of conversations, a lot of choices. Yeah. So thank you guys. This is great. Let me know. I'll let you know what time I'll be live tomorrow. Please continue to send your questions. They're very helpful. And have a beautiful day. And what if you're not nearly as fucked up as you think you are? Just ponder that for today. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.